Hello there. Welcome into a Friday edition of the show. I am back from Las Vegas. The voice still not back to 100%. But at this time of year, no one is 100%. We shall forge ahead. Appreciate you tuning in, whether it's on your radio, online, or through the Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you, and I'd love to get your take. 719-247-1313 is the number you could text or call. Got you for the next 3 hours. We got Avs coming up at 7, taking on Calgary. Couple of early things I've seen. It will be Scott Wedgwood in net and Eric Johnson, Condor, will be in the lineup tonight as well. I want to talk about Sunday, not to push totally past the game tonight, because this is the stage of the season where the Avs need every result they can get. But Sunday is going to be significant. Not just because of the team they play, but also because of one of the players on said team. And I will get to that topic coming up. But I want to start with the Denver Nuggets because yesterday, fun fact, if it rains at all, at any point in a 24-hour period, your plane from Las Vegas cannot take off. I found this out as my flight was delayed for 4 hours yesterday getting back, which made the show impossible. Now, I would have done it from the airport, but there was just almost everything was getting delayed. I didn't have enough room. I couldn't set up my stuff to be able to do a show at Harry Reid Airport. But yeah, it rained a little bit in the morning in Vegas, and they're like, no, we're not taking off. So, because I was going to lead the show off yesterday with the Nuggets and the Timberwolves, so I'll just do that right now. You know, there was something that I heard on SportsCenter after the Nuggets-Wolves game. And if you did not see, the Nuggets got completely smacked. Again. By the team that beat them in a 7-game series last year. They're now 0-3, by the way, this season against the Minnesota Timberwolves. But I heard something from the Wolves side of the equation that stuck out to me. And it was something that Chris Finch, the head coach, told his team about hunger, about making sure that they are the hungrier team on the court. And then I heard Rudy Gobert intimating those same things in the locker room after the game.
I mean, we're hungry. We're hungry, and now that we got everybody back, it's an opportunity for us to play at an even higher intensity level.
Hungry. The Minnesota Timberwolves, now they're on a winning streak, right? So they could be talking just about themselves in general. But watching that game between the Nuggets and the Wolves, I certainly saw one team that was hungrier. And I know the Nuggets were coming off of a significant win against Oklahoma City. And I don't want to diminish that. But Wednesday was not the definition of a letdown game. Okay? They weren't playing Atlanta. They weren't playing Washington. They weren't playing Sacramento or San Antonio. They were playing Minnesota. It was another big game. It happens sometimes. You have multiple big games. The Nuggets have been mired in a week of significant games. 2 against OKC, won against Minnesota, and even tonight, even without LeBron James, many people, especially given the last meeting between the Lakers and the Nuggets, would describe tonight's game as a significant game. So it happens sometimes. You can't let up. Right? You go from big game to big game to big game. I mean, it's a privilege to be playing in a string of significant games. And I saw a team in the Minnesota Timberwolves that is playing all these big games. They're looking at all of these games that they're winning of late to be big games. And they're in a different spot in the pecking order than the Denver Nuggets, I will grant you. And it's a little bit easier for them to be hungrier, given they're trying to stay out of the play-in. But really think on this, because I did. I even Googled it. I don't recall a lot of talk with the Denver Nuggets about being hungry. I think I've heard Michael Malone talk about it. I don't know that I've heard the team talk about it. You know, part of the reason why, even though the Nuggets are where they are in the standings, which is in a fine spot, they've won way more games than they've lost. But part of the reason why this season feels like a slog and feels at every point where you start to buy into the Denver Nuggets, something happens and you're like, I think I might be out on these guys, is because the games that they should be hungriest for, the games they should get up for the most, are the ones that they perform the worst. I mean, good on them for beating Oklahoma City the second night, but what happened the first night? What happened in the Laker game? Here are the games that, if you're a Nuggets fan, you probably care about the most. Maybe there are some exceptions. Boston, LA, the Lakers, not the Clippers. Oklahoma City, Milwaukee, maybe. Cleveland, and Minnesota. All right, that's probably the group. Forget about how good those teams are or anything like that. Those are not forget, because Cleveland is a big game because of how good they are. Some of them are how good they are. Some of them are just, those are games that Nuggets fans tune into, that Nuggets fans care about. The Nuggets are now 3-11 in those games. Split with LA, split with OKC. They've lost every other game to those teams I just mentioned. Minnesota, they've been blown out twice. So my question is, where's the hunger from the Denver Nuggets? We know this is still a difficult matchup for them. Simply getting rid of Karl-Anthony Towns and bringing in Julius Randle has not completely transformed Minnesota to the point that they're not still a difficult matchup. Ask Michael Porter and Jamal Murray how difficult it still is to go up against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Yeah, maybe Jokic has an easier time. But the Wolves talked about it after the game. They didn't quite do the same thing that the Lakers have done. It'll be interesting to see tonight if JJ Redick throws as much at Nikola Jokic as he did the last time they played. But Minnesota, the mindset was the same. It is now no longer a choice. You want Nikola Jokic to get rid of the basketball. That's what it is. And Nikola Jokic put up big points against Rudy Gobert. But Rudy Gobert was sitting back in the locker room and his teammates were around him, patting him on the back. Why? He had what? 5 assists in that game? Maybe 6? The Wolves may feel like they have less of a chance to stop Nikola Jokic, but they have every bit the chance they always have of limiting option 2 and option 3 and option 4. Aaron Gordon wasn't playing in that game. So it's still very difficult for Jamal Murray to contend with the Wolves. It's difficult for Michael Porter Jr. to contend with the Minnesota Timberwolves. And that's what teams want. They want the ball in the hands of those two players. And getting back to the idea of hunger, how does that not make you hungrier to have a good game? It's blatantly obvious to everybody watching that the NBA does not respect anyone not wearing number 15 on the Denver Nuggets. Or at least it's not a large leap to get from wherever they actually are to the fact that they aren't worried about anybody else not named Nikola Jokic. They're in that realm. They don't care. Okay, Jamal Murray has the ball. All right, we'll live with it. Michael Porter has the ball. Even better. Aaron Gordon has the ball. Great. Christian Brown's throwing down a thunderous dunk. That's going to make a highlight reel. Fantastic. Don't bother us. This is what's required. Winning these marquee games. The biggest question about the Nuggets after they won a title, are they still hungry? And now a year later, we're asking the same question, but it has a different context to it. We asked the question, are the Nuggets hungry for another title last year? Because they had just won it, right? They had just summited that mountain. Can they summon the energy to climb back up? Well, that's out the window. They're not the champs anymore. They're not even the favorite to represent their own conference. And depending on who you ask, they're maybe 3rd or 4th in the pecking order in their own conference, let alone what the East is throwing at you. Why are we asking this question in March? Why does it have to be just okay that the Denver Nuggets split with Oklahoma City? To me, it's not okay to get blown out by Minnesota. This is a team that just last year beat you. This is the time of year where the Nuggets should be starting to turn it on. And I'm not talking about playing Jokic too many minutes and Jamal Murray. Like, it has almost nothing to do with that. I'm not saying that you have to sell out and play Nikola Jokic the entirety of the game or Jamal Murray the entirety of the game. Because I said I felt as good about the Nuggets in the second half against Boston, a game they still lost, and where Nikola Jokic did not play the entire second half, I felt pretty dang good about it. This isn't about them losing to Minnesota as much as it is how they are losing. What they look like compared to Minnesota. If you want to be an optimist, you can get in to certain games and pull out things that you feel optimistic about, and it doesn't have to result in a win. I just did that with the Boston game. But there was nothing in the Minnesota game. There was nothing. They got blitzed from the outset. Again, on national television. To a team that has in the past given them issues. You can't just, say, well, whatever, it's Minnesota. It doesn't matter. It does. They might meet each other in the very first round of the playoffs. And it doesn't look like the Nuggets are operating at the same level as Minnesota in terms of their desire to win these games. They'd make it so much easier on themselves if they would just get up for these games that I'm mentioning. Because they're the games that matter. I'm sorry. In an 82-game season, for a team that's in the upper echelon in the NBA, not every game matters. A fraction of them do. But more often than not, the Nuggets fall woefully short in those games. And there's a lot of different back-to-backs, 3 games in 4 nights, not having Aaron Gordon. We can go on and on and on of all these reasons why maybe one game in a vacuum they don't win. But we're past one game in a vacuum. It's a trend. And the other night when the Nuggets were playing other afternoon, when the Nuggets were playing Oklahoma City, how well they came out. I tweeted out, it's almost like the Nuggets understand how big of a game this is. And some of you on X responded. And then what happened? Oklahoma City put their foot down, turned the tide, and never looked back. And credit to the Nuggets for winning the next game. But then the next time up, you have the Minnesota game. Every time that you're getting ready to buy into this team, they give you a big reason to back off. And we're almost through this stretch, right? Tonight's another one, right? They don't have LeBron. Show that you've learned some things from the last meeting. You're only playing, like Luka went berserker last night and the Lakers still lost. I don't see how this can't be a Nuggets win. But they just disappoint far too often, and I can't help but wonder if the desire that is required is not there. Or it's just not there consistently enough. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, if you were in the building on Sunday, would you boo Mikko Rantanen? We are getting closer to Sunday, which means the brackets will be released. And then we got to figure out how we're going to fill out said brackets. And I will be on hand doing the show Wednesday at 3. I think I said Tuesday. I had it wrong. It was Wednesday. March 19th. I will be doing the show from 3 to 5, leading right into the second half of the first 4. 2 of the first 4 on Tuesday, 2 on Wednesday, 3 to 5 Wednesday at Trainwreck, just a couple blocks away from Widener Field downtown. Come on by, check out their new menu, play some of their backyard games or hit the golf simulator, hang out, watch the games. We'll be doing some bracketology while we're out there. So 3 to 5 this coming Wednesday at Trainwreck on South Sierra Madre in downtown Colorado Springs. So tonight the Avs play Calgary. But the main event of the weekend, this is just an appetizer. This is just the whatever you want to call it. Because Sunday is the main course. Mikko Rantanen and the Dallas Stars visiting Ball Arena. A game that already would be incredibly significant if it was just Dallas, Colorado, without any additional layers to it. But now you have Mikko Rantanen, and this is going to become a regular thing. Mikko Rantanen coming back to Ball Arena. Now, in some of his last comments before he arrives in Denver, Mikko Rantanen doubled down on his assertion that he never wanted to leave. Said Colorado was always where I wanted to stay, but I understand it's business and they made a decision. I try my best in Carolina. I'm here now, and I'm so happy to be here, locked in for 8 years with a good team, with good coaches. I'm thankful for Dallas to have that trust in me. The question is, should you boo? Is Mikko Rantanen the traitor that he has been made out to be? Because if he is a traitor, then he deserves to be booed. I don't think that he is. You can say, well, why did you have to sign with the Dallas Stars? Of all the teams, I get it. But once he's out of Colorado, it's like, was he supposed to take the Avs' feelings into consideration? Supposed to take your feelings into consideration as a fan? Like, he gets traded. He told them that if you give me $12 million a year, which is what he signed with Dallas for, I'll stay. I'll sign on the dotted line today. Today passed, and then he was traded. The Avs didn't want him. So I think, so he's supposed to go to, to NHL Siberia and go play for the Sabres or something? Like, once Colorado was out of the equation, he needs to go where's best for him. And the guy has tasted what it's like to win a Stanley Cup. You don't think he wants to win more? And from that standpoint, do you blame him for picking Dallas? For that being one of the few teams on his list? Edmonton was also on his list. How much better would it be if he was on a line with either Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl? Would that be looked at as less of a betrayal? What if he even went to LA? team in the Western Conference? Or what if it was Vegas? Like, once Colorado dealt him, you can't blame Mikko Rantanen for then making the best decision for his career. So I actually don't think there should be any booing of Mikko Rantanen. None. Because if it were up to him, he'd still be there. And there's a great comparison to make, because on the very same team as Mikko Rantanen is someone who went about his exit from Colorado in a completely different way in Matt Duchene. To say that Mikko Rantanen and Matt Duchene are on the same level or deserve the same treatment, that's just not true. Matt Duchene went about his business in a very different way. He just flat out did not want to be in Colorado. I think Mikko Rantanen is closer to Ryan O'Reilly if we're making a historical comparison than Matt Duchene. The Avs played hardball with him, and they said, we're not going above this number, which is their prerogative. But to boo Mikko Rantanen because he chose what was best for his career. And look, there should be no booing. There will be. I know there will be. There are Avs fans who feel betrayed. There are Avs fans who will just be worked into a lather, and there's something about being at the game and being in that environment. Mikko Rantanen will probably be booed. But he shouldn't be. He wasn't being greedy. He was negotiating and settled on a number that's more than fair. $12 million a year is more than fair. The Avs chose not to pay it. So if you're still upset that Mikko Rantanen is no longer with the Avs, find Chris McFarland somewhere in the arena and boo him. I think there is a future here where we'll look at this and say both parties ended up okay. Right? I think both teams are going to compete for Stanley Cups. Every day, Mikko Rantanen will be missed a little bit less. And he'll be chasing the Cups in Dallas and Colorado with all the parts they have, including Marty Necas, will go after their own Cups. And it's going to still make those series in that game on Sunday fascinating. I'm fascinated to see the welcome or lack thereof Mikko Rantanen gets at Ball Arena. I'm fascinated to see the first big hit that is put on Mikko Rantanen. And I'm fascinated to see who gets quote unquote revenge over one another. Right now, Mikko Rantanen, it's his revenge game. As far as I'm concerned. It's not the Avs' revenge game. You know, for years, we have been wondering post Detroit. Excuse me. Voice isn't back yet. In fact, you know what? Let me take a break. I'll get a drink of water and we'll finish my thought. BroncosFootball.com now to enter this national contest for your chance to win. All right. I'm back. See, not everybody's 100% right now. Playing through it does not bode well that I'm already faltering half an hour into the show when I have a 3-hour show and then switchbacks tomorrow. Speaking of which, I do have tickets to the home opener to give away. I'll actually do that here before I take my next break. So hang tight. We'll do it right before the top of the hour here. But just to finish my thought on Mikko Rantanen's return to Colorado, he plays for the enemy. And that makes him the Avs' enemy. But let's be real. You don't boo every single player on the Dallas Stars. You boo them collectively as they come out on the ice. Maybe there will be a little extra booing going on, that maybe the volume level will go up a bit when Dallas first takes the ice on Sunday. But the booing when somebody is introduced, booing when somebody touches the puck, that's a different story. And that's what people think that Mikko should be done to Mikko Rantanen. I don't agree. I don't. But I'm sure there will be booing, and we'll see how much coming up on Sunday. And that's a big game, obviously. Season ended today. Those would be two teams matched up in the first round of the playoffs. So Avs Flames before that. Coming up tonight, 7 o'clock here on Extra Sports 1300. One other thing I want to talk about here. Our last hope to get a local team into the NCAA tournament lies with the Colorado State Rams. Buffs got a couple of upsets. You're like, Buffs. And then they went up against Houston, and then that was that. Air Force obviously got bounced night one of the Mount West tournament against UNLV. And Northern Colorado, if we want to go all the way up to Greeley, they fell in their, I believe it was their conference title game. So it's all on the Rams now. And much of that all is on the shoulders of Nate Clifford, who last night put together a signature performance in his collegiate career. 25 points, 14 rebounds, both game highs as CSU beats Nevada to move on to the Mount West semifinals. No matter how this ends, because I think the margin for CSU is very narrow. I think they got to win this tournament. Maybe if they win tonight, you could make a case. But what I'm hearing, the way people are talking, CSU's got to win this thing outright. And that's one of the things we love about March is when a team has no other recourse but to just keep winning. They have no chance. The regular season did them no favors to curry favor from the tournament committee. Their only path is by winning their conference tournament. And that's a big reason why my viewing this week is more heavily tilted towards the smaller conferences, because those tournaments are for all the marbles. Mount West, they're a multi-bid league. So there are teams in this league that don't have to win this tournament. I think CSU has to. But the idea that you got to keep winning and keep winning and keep winning, and anything short of winning your conference tournament is going to get you in, it's fascinating to watch teams like that. And the Rams have been that way for a while. And how have they responded? By winning 8 straight games. And Nick Clifford has been leading the way. If you recall, he just had 36 against Boise State last week to close out the regular season. So Colorado Springs' own Nick Clifford, not to say he's doing it by himself, but he's certainly leading the way for the Colorado State Rams to try and make an improbable run here at the end of the season through the Mount West tournament to get a bid and to be a bid stealer from somebody else. Please let it be North Carolina. Not that I have any animus towards North Carolina, but the idea that somehow they're going to get in to the tournament with anything short of an ACC title, it would just be because they're North Carolina. They need to do what CSU's doing. And they might. Who knows? But I'm saying if North Carolina falls short and doesn't win the ACC tournament, they should not get in. And if the tournament committee is contemplating that and CSU, a team they did not have in from the Mount West, wins the tournament, then I hope that that bid comes at the expense of North Carolina. But what's going on with the Rams right now is remarkable. And the level that Nick Clifford has taken his game to for the Rams is equally remarkable. And you want to look bigger picture with Nick Clifford. This was somebody who put his name in the draft last year. Heard back. And was basically told, yeah, you're not ready yet. And now every draft person that I have heard or spoken to says, yeah, Nick Clifford's an NBA player now. It can happen that quick. One more year. And it can happen. And it's not just 25 and 14. It's not just 36 points that Nick had the other night against Boise State. Look at the level of defense this dude is playing. And that was probably already there. He was probably already playing NBA caliber defense. But now he's an even more well-rounded player. And he has turned himself into an NBA prospect. After becoming one of those positive transfer portal. We always hear about the negatives about the transfer portal. You know, this school's just hemorrhaging talent because they can't, Dan Hurley the other night on 60 Minutes talking about how half of his team is already thinking about where they're going, if they're going to transfer and where they're transferring to. A year after winning back-to-back titles. So there's a lot of negative that goes around with the transfer portal and players that enter it. Look at Nick Clifford. Look at what his story would have been had he not. He's what the transfer portal is supposed to be. Not about NIL, although I don't have a problem with NIL, but it's not supposed to be about that. You should have more, and this is an NBA phrase, but more freedom of movement if you go someplace and you're not getting your opportunity. And at CU, Nick didn't get his opportunity. So he bet on himself. He went into the transfer portal. He didn't, go to this massive, huge school like North Carolina or something like that. Like we see a lot of transfers. Oh, I'll just go to this big school. He goes to CSU. He moves down the street, basically. Doesn't leave his home state. Doesn't go to a bigger school. Just goes to a place that is going to give him more of an opportunity. And he has made the absolute most of it. Watching him in this Rams team, it's been like, look, Air Force in Colorado really suffered this year. This state of college basketball in Colorado wasn't great this year. Right? And it's not, from CU's perspective, it's not totally surprising. Last year in that tournament, with that great run they went on, it felt a little like the last dance, right? It just felt like Tad, as good of a coach as he is, wasn't going to be able to get CU back to that level. And probably it actually went the other way. It's probably a worse season than many expected in Boulder. But CSU's it. If somebody's going to get a bid, and CSU's got to thread the needle here. I'll say this. At least they got to win tonight. At least they got to win tonight. I don't see how CSU, as great of a run as they have been on, how they are going to get a tournament bid if they at least don't play tomorrow in the Mountain West Championship game. But no matter how it ends, it's been a remarkable run. And for somebody that's from here, I know Neek. And nobody deserves this. The amount I've heard Neek Clifford mentioned on multiple national radio shows. He's making a national impression with the way he's playing. And he's going to be in the NBA. Couldn't be happier for the guy. Rams very late this evening play Utah State, which, if you'll recall, was the last team that beat CSU before they went on this 8-game winning streak. But also don't forget that those two teams met again shortly after Utah State beat CSU in Logan, and the Rams blew the doors off of the Aggies. Just right there encapsulates the switch that has been flipped for the CSU Rams. But Utah State is the team that can say, we just beat this team. We're the last ones to beat this team. So tonight, stay up late. It'll be 10 o'clock. Well worth your watch. Neek is on some kind of level right now, and the Rams are on some kind of a roll. And see if they can get to the Mountain West title game, which will be tomorrow afternoon. As promised, tomorrow the Colorado Springs Switchbacks will celebrate their championship season, right? As is customary with reigning champions. Their first home game, there is much pomp and circumstance. It will be tomorrow, an earlier start, 4 o'clock. Coincidentally, same time CSU would play in the Mountain West championship game. Just apropos of nothing, and I guess I was just talking about it, and it popped in my head. Oh, it's the same time. Anyway, 4 o'clock tomorrow. Much celebration will go on, and then the Switchbacks will look to get their first win this season. They're coming off of a draw against El Paso. They will host Detroit City FC. If you want to be a part of the festivities, I have 2 tickets to tomorrow evening. What's 4 o'clock? Is it afternoon? Is it evening? What is it? It's your Saturday. Be the 13th texter to text Switchbacks in your name to 719-247-1313, and I'll hook you up with the pair of tickets for tomorrow's match. And if you do not win, don't forget, still limited tickets available at switchbacksfc.com. Coming up next on the radio program, the Broncos reportedly aren't interested in one of the more significant remaining free agents. So could that mean that they're just kind of done with free agency altogether? Welcome in Drive Time Sports on this Friday. Brian Kaufman with you. Remember, you can watch the show live on a daily basis on our social media platforms at XTRA Sports 1300. That's good for Facebook. It's good for X, Instagram, YouTube. Also on my social media platforms, if you follow me on there as well. Congratulations to Rich. He won a pair of tickets to see the Switchbacks take on Detroit City FC tomorrow for the championship celebration. Make sure they're early, Rich, because you get either giving away beanies. I want a beanie. It's always hit and miss whether Roland and I get the giveaways. Hopefully this weekend's a hit. I would very much like a beanie. Got more tickets, by the way, to give away over the course of the program. 719-247-1313 is the text and the phone line if you would like to get all interactive up in here. So the Broncos have had a good free agency period. I saw Frank Schwab of Yahoo give the Broncos a B. And it follows very much the same thinking I was talking about on Wednesday, which is the more stuff you get, the more likely you are to grade higher. So there are teams that are getting A pluses and A's in free agency just because they've gotten a bunch of stuff. Now, some of that stuff's really good stuff. Like Minnesota, I think they probably had the best offseason of anybody. They got a lot of stuff. But a lot of stuff doesn't necessarily mean you've improved your team by that much. Case in point, Deebo Samuel going to Washington. Still don't like that move. And there are teams that are getting a bunch of stuff, and you're like, okay, well, what's it going to translate to? So, in a way, if the Broncos are getting a B, that's probably about the best grade that they could get. Because they were never going to go crazy in free agency. They probably weren't going to be the highest bidder for anybody. They're just not in that mindset. But there are still free agents available, some of which would look good in a Broncos uniform. May I present to you Cooper Kupp, who I have stumped for on this show before. Think he would be a great addition to the Denver Broncos. Veteran, productive, sure hands, great locker room guy. Cooper Kupp would be really good on the Denver Broncos. Well, Diana Rossini of The Athletic is reporting that the Broncos aren't really in on Cooper Kupp, which I do find to be a little bit surprising that they're not even in on him. Now, some reports in this coming out of New England that Cooper Kupp's asking price is a bit high. And by a bit, I mean a lot. But that shouldn't preclude a team for at least being like interested in him. The way that Diana Rossini made it sound is they're not even looking at Cooper Kupp, which I do find to be very surprising. Now, I do think as she went on to talk about the why of it all, I do kind of buy this part of it. I've never gotten the sense that wide receivers was on the top of the Broncos wish list of players they were trying to bring in this offseason outside of the draft. And I've been saying Emeka Egbuka, and sometimes I have butchered his name, but I'm talking about the same guy. I've been talking about Emeka Egbuka for weeks. I do think that the Broncos are seriously considering bringing in a wide receiver in the draft. And I do know that they had other priorities, like tight end / Joker. And they got that item of business done. Inside linebacker. I didn't think that the Broncos would really meet the open market asking price of Nick Bolton, but he ended up going back to Kansas City anyway. So I like all the explanation of it, like I get it. But still, I thought that they would be interested in Cooper Kupp. So it is a little bit surprising that according to Diana Rossini, and again, keep in mind who's reporting things. When, Kay Adams says something about the Broncos, listen. When Diana Rossini is saying something about the Broncos, listen. Because Sean Payton talks to them. You can, after a while, you can kind of pick out who in the national media, and Sean Payton's more of a national media guy than a local media guy. So there are a few of these insiders that you say, like, look, there's Schefter and Rappaport, and they're well connected into everybody. They hear everything, right? But there are some in the national media that curry favor with certain coaches. And I have come to find that Diana Rossini is a pretty good source when it comes to the thinking of Sean Payton. Colin Cowherd's another one. If you ever listen to his radio show, when he speaks about the Denver Broncos, he knows of what he speaks because he and Payton are buddies. So when Diana Rossini says that the Broncos aren't really in on Cooper Kupp, I'm surprised, but I'll take it. Like I'll accept it. But you could see with that Joker role being the top priority, and now having gotten it, and you saw Evan Ingram's tweet, right? Evan Ingram tweeted out a gif of Heath Ledger's Joker when he gets busted out of jail and he's leaning his head out the window. Like, Evan Ingram is embracing this. And you wonder, and I was having this conversation with somebody today, reportedly the money was the same. Okay, because that's always the big thing. Did the Broncos outbid the Chargers? Reportedly, they didn't. Evan Ingram had very similar offers from both teams. Okay, so you wonder, well, why do the Broncos get Evan Ingram and the Chargers don't? I mean, really look at this. Would you rather get thrown the ball from Justin Herbert or Bo Nix? I would say Herbert. For a person who has a lot of disposable income, more often than not, would they choose LA or Denver? I think a lot would choose LA. So what does this come down to? Because we know the Chargers aren't, or I should say that the Broncos aren't a ton better than the Chargers. In fact, the Chargers beat them twice this year. So is there this perception that the Broncos are a much better team than the Chargers? I don't think so. So why did Evan Ingram choose Denver? I think that tweet tells you everything you need to know. This role of the Joker has got to be very appealing. If Evan Ingram sits down in a room with Sean Payton, and it reminds me, if you watch Entourage, when Vinny was opening up, he was going to sign with any talent agency, right? He was opening it up. And all these talent agencies had very similar presentations. They were like Coke, Microsoft, Vincent Chase. And then the next one was like Pepsi, Apple, Vincent Chase. Evan Ingram could sit in that room with Sean Payton, and Sean Payton could go Darren Sproles, Reggie Bush, Jimmy Graham, Evan Ingram. Sean Payton could say, look at what I did with these players. I want you to fill that role for me. What I did in New Orleans with these players, I'm going to do for you. In LA, Evan Ingram's going to be, for all intents and purposes, just a tight end. Not to say that Jim Harbaugh doesn't have the capability of using Evan Ingram as a mismatch, but they don't have this like defined thing like Joker, or maybe it's not defined. Maybe that's the allure of it. It's kind of this nebulous. It can be a running back, it could be a tight end, and you got to do this, and you got to do that. But I think that role is ultimately what won the Denver Broncos Evan Ingram. Because I don't think you look at all the other reasons why somebody would sign with the team in free agency and say, advantage Broncos across the board. Negligible difference, maybe. I would say the quarterback is probably the most prohibitive tilt towards the Chargers. But, place to live, money, coaches, how close they are to winning a championship, like all these things, about the same. I think that that you're going to be this is what sold Evan Ingram. A role just for him. A role where he would be more than, quote unquote, just a tight end. I think that's what landed them Evan Ingram. So you get that guy. And now the weapons room for the Denver Broncos, the pass catching weapons room, if there is even such a room, is a little bit more crowded. Right now that they got that done, because there were very few candidates for that Joker role. Right? So there was this thought of, I think from a lot of people talking about what the Broncos need in free agency, there was like this, yeah, they want the Joker, but are they going to be able to get one? And if they get one, they'll probably get one through the draft. So then it's, well, maybe they'll upgrade tight end, but they won't have like this. Well, now all of a sudden you have Evan Ingram, who will see how many catches he makes this year, but certainly they're going to try to get him the ball. And I've talked about this, like just having him on the field is half the battle. That's what Sean Payton wants first, is just to have that kind of guy with his physical tools on the field so he can make adjustments elsewhere and open up good matchups for other Broncos players. Then it's, okay, is Evan Ingram going to be the one to get the ball? I'm sure the Broncos have every plan to get him the ball. But whether it works out or not, that remains to be seen. So without the Joker, now you're looking at, okay, Marvin Mims, you're looking at the running back room, you're looking at Cortland Sutton, Devon Vele, Troy Franklin, and you're going, okay, they need another wide receiver. Do they need one now? A veteran wide receiver, right? Because that was the ultimate goal here. Is it's not just that Bo Nix needs more guys to throw the ball to. He needs guys that he can rely upon, veterans with proven track records. That's where Cooper Kupp comes in. That's where Chris Godwin came in. Well, now they have Evan Ingram. And it's like, okay, you're going to get the ball to Mims. You're going to try to get the ball to Ingram. All indications are you want to bring back Cortland Sutton. You want to pay $14 million for Cooper Kupp? So I understand why now the Broncos, like the report would make more sense to me if it was the Broncos were initially interested, but now aren't. The fact that they were never interested is in fact interesting to me because I thought that Cooper Kupp would be a good option for them and would give them what they're looking for. Not the Joker, but reliable pass-catching weapons with proven track records for Bo Nix. Because this idea, I'm sorry, if you're betting on both Devon Vele and Troy Franklin hitting, you are out of your gourd. There is no way that both of those guys are going to turn into something. It's just the math just doesn't work out. Okay, if you get one of those guys contributing on a semi-regular basis, like if Devon Vele turns into Tim Patrick, that's hit. He hit then. But what does that leave Troy Franklin? If you have Cortland Sutton, if you have Evan Ingram, if you're a team that still wants to run the ball and you have a quarterback that can use his legs at times, like how many offensive plays do you plan on running in a game? So it's not me saying Vele and Franklin both aren't good enough. The room gets kind of crowded. And this idea that you're going to go all in on all these young receivers, I just don't see it. So if Devon Vele turns into like this deep threat guy, then cool. Or if they can use Troy Franklin in some ways, cool. Then you got another weapon there. But the idea that they're going to, rise to any kind of prominence in the Broncos offense, it just probably wasn't going to happen. But you have Mims, you have Sutton, now you have Ingram. I could understand that after landing Ingram, that maybe a veteran wide receiver is no longer in the cards, considering that now you can try to get one of the best pass catchers in the draft, which also goes to my Devon Vele, Troy Franklin thing. One of those guys might even be forced off the roster if the Broncos draft a young wide receiver. And Diana Rossini's report is saying essentially that they're looking in the draft for wide receivers. So, veteran wide receiver, though, probably all done with that. Sutton, Mims, Ingram, draft a wide receiver at some point. And that's kind of your pass catching room. Only so many footballs that can go around. So the question is, if it's not a veteran wide receiver, certainly on the list. Now, Cooper Kupp, who seems to be about the best that's available, Broncos aren't interested. Are they done with free agency Pretty much. Are they done? I think they are, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I'll tell you why next on Extra Sports 1300. Would love to see you out at Trainwreck on Wednesday. Why do I keep doing that? Wednesday, March 19th. I will be doing the show from 3 to 5, just a couple of blocks south of Widener Field, doing some bracketology. We'll see what other NFL free agent moves are there to be made. It'll just be a good old time. So coming out 3 to 5, Trainwreck, downtown Colorado Springs, this Wednesday afternoon. So Broncos not interested in Cooper Kupp, reportedly. Are they done with free agency? I mean, in a real way. I'm not saying depth. Can't have enough depth. I'm sure that we will see the Broncos sign depth players. But in terms of the bigger ticket items, I think the Broncos might be done. Maybe a J.K. Dobbins. We'll see. But if they are, I think they did their job. They don't need, and Greg Penner talked about this after the season was over. They're not in the same spot they were when they went out and got McGlinchey and got Powers and went on kind of a spending spree. They're in a different spot. So how much more do they need? Because here's the reality of the Denver Broncos. They need to get better, right? But they got better at safety. They got better at tight end. They got in their new tight end, that joker player. They got an inside linebacker. What else does this team really, really need? That they have to get in free agency. Sure, they need to get a running back. They could do it in the draft. Does it have to be a veteran running back? With this crop, they need a reliable pass catcher, another one. I agree. That's why I've been saying Emeka Egbuka at number 20. I don't know what else the Broncos, a punter. There you go. There's one. They need a punter. Probably don't want to wait till the draft to get a punter. The Broncos right now, wherever you expect them to go from where they were this year to what you expect them to be next year, is it really... I get having better players at certain positions can help them win more football games. But Sean Payton's whole thing has been winning on the margins, right? So the Broncos get a little bit better, or you could argue a lot of bit better, but they get better at very specific spots. Not we're going to get a better wide receiver, better quarterback, better lineman, better this, better that. They were very purposeful with what they went out and got. They wanted a safety, they wanted an inside linebacker, and they wanted this joker type player who happens to play tight end. Almost killing two birds with one stone in getting Evan Ingram. So these players will help them, but what's separating the Broncos from going to the next level? They were 1-6 in close games, including 0-2 against the Chargers. They lost close games to LA twice. 1-6 in games decided by one score. They beat one playoff team in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's it. Or 1.5. Because the team in Week 18 was technically the Kansas City Chiefs. And they lost 2 games out of the gate that were close, but also you had to keep your expectation a little bit low considering you were breaking in a rookie quarterback. So my point here is where the Broncos, a lot of the Broncos improvement for next year will not be in an upgrade at this position or that position necessarily. It will be the maturation of the team that already exists. Talk about how teams are in close games. They're usually a coin flip. Right? Broncos don't need to go 6-1 in one-score games to get where they'd like to go or to build upon, have a better season this coming year than they did the previous year. They don't have to go 6-1. Let's say they win 3. They go 3-4 in one-score games. Not a great record. There's 2 more wins. Can you get one of those against the Chargers? Even better. And now there won't be the same low expectations coming out of the gate in game 1. It's going to be a completely different dynamic to start the season for the Denver Broncos this year than it was last year. Is that good for 1 win? Instead of losing their first 2, can they win one of their next 2? Now we're talking about a team that wins 3 more games. And maybe one of those 3 will come at the expense of the team closest to them in the AFC West in the Chargers. So, yes, the Broncos had to get better at certain positions to give them a better chance to win these games. But a lot of how the Broncos add to their win total, how the Broncos have a better season next year, is the maturation of Bo Nix. Is the further maturation of this football team. And it's not a foregone conclusion. I'm not saying you can just book it that now the Broncos are going to be about 500 in one-score games, or that they'll be able to at least split the season series with the Chargers, or win at least one of the first 2 games out of the gate. None of that is a given, but I'm just pointing out pretty glaring spots in which if the Broncos are about league average, if they do about what the rest of the league does in close games in their first 2 weeks against division rivals that are pretty close to them in talent, they'll have a better season. But this free agency is just an extension of what Sean Payton has been preaching all year. Winning on the margins. We're not making wholesale changes to the team, not upgrading every position. I mean, better here. With veteran commodities. And we'll go into the draft and we'll get a couple of other guys that we can improve. I don't think that the Broncos have to do more than they've already done. I think there are some people that thought they would do more. But look at how they upgraded, the positions that they upgraded, the players that they got for those positions. And it's going to give them a better chance to flip a couple of one-score games, to maybe break through against the Chargers. And that's what I'm looking at. Can the Broncos be the best team in the AFC West not named Kansas City? They'll take their shot at Kansas City, and we'll see how it goes. But you can't have another season where you're the 3rd best in your division, because then the math becomes very difficult. And while this year it went in the Broncos' favor and they got that 7th spot, it's not guaranteed that they will this year. Heck, even being the second best team in your division doesn't guarantee you're going to get a playoff spot, but you got 7 teams, 3 wild cards. I mean, the math kind of makes sense if you're the second best team in your division. I think that should be the bar that is set for the Broncos this year. And I look at the 3 significant moves they have made and what I expect them to do in the draft, and I say that that's enough upgrading of the roster. Now it's just, all right, Bo Nix, are you going to build on what you did in year 1, or are we going to see a little bit of regression? Because a lot of the stuff that the Broncos were lacking in last year, the league average is better than that. They're a little bit below average. Can they get to average, and all of a sudden that's how they accomplish, I think, their most realistic goal for this upcoming season. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on Broncos free agency. Do you think there's anything left for this team to do? And if not, let's look ahead to the draft, shall we? I don't rule out them taking a tight end, but certainly they don't have to. Opens up a few more options now. And they can maybe look best player available rather than, oh, we got to get this, which is a good spot to be in. Not everybody's in that kind of a spot. And that's what I've always pushed, is that don't diminish drafting for need, because there are big needs on a team. The key is you don't reach. Right? But the tie goes to the need. I don't know that the Broncos have this glaring must thing that they have to get at 20. There are things that they must get in this draft. I think they must get a receiver. I think they must get a running back. I think they must get depth on both their offensive and defensive lines. But they don't have to necessarily go one of those spots at 20 because of the work they did in free agency. 719-247-1313. Your chance to win tickets to the Switchbacks home opener coming up next. Some breaking news out of the National Football League, widely reported now. Cooper Kupp is heading to Seattle. Get the deets on that and whether Seattle's paying him what he was asking for that so many people were scoffing at. Now, it does make sense. Apparently, Cooper Kupp is from there, which now would make sense why he ended up at Eastern Washington as I'm reverse engineering all of this. But you have Seattle that released Tyler Lockett, traded DK Metcalf. You have Njigba, but you have Sam Darnold, who you know is going to need more than just Jackson Smith and Njigba to be good. And you get Cooper Kupp. Question is, were the Broncos really never interested in him, or was it about money? Or, like I said, I have a hard time believing that the Broncos were never interested in him. But I could totally get the idea that once they got Evan Ingram, they went, yeah, we don't need to get a higher priced veteran wide receiver. So Cooper Kupp going to Seattle to play with Sam Darnold. Seattle's interesting. You trade Geno Smith and you bring in Sam Darnold. And I get it. Sam Darnold could be an upgrade, but not a significant one. And you get rid of Metcalf and you get rid of Lockett, and now you bring in Cooper Kupp. It's like, I feel like Seattle's just trying to be a little bit better than they were the year before. But I guess I suppose that the Broncos are kind of in that same boat, that they just need to get a little bit better. I just think that the Broncos have actually made themselves quite a bit better at certain positions. I mean, look at safety, inside linebacker, and tight end. Look at what you got from those positions. Seattle had production, high-level production, out of the wide receiver spot. So it's not like Cooper Kupp is this great upgrade over, as I guess, essentially DK Metcalf, right? I don't know. You get him over DK Metcalf, and you get a more prominent role for Jackson Smith and Njigba. But like the Broncos went at three positions where, let's just be honest, they weren't very good at. Period. And significantly upgraded them. And since we're talking about Seattle and Denver simultaneously, you know, it is noteworthy how the Broncos have continued to extricate themselves from the Russell Wilson trade. Right? The impact of that, or have maybe the better way to put it is how they've been able to navigate around it. I just got done saying the last segment, what's out there that the Broncos have to get in free agency? Can't they get everything that is still on their wish list in the draft? I think they can. And we'll see if the draft board, you know, breaks their way. But my whole thing with the wide receiver room is I just think Bo Nix needs to be able to trust his receivers a little bit more. I just think he needs receivers that can catch the ball. Saw what happened with Devon Vele in the Buffalo game. Like, he just needs sure-handed weapons. And the surest way to get a sure-handed wide receiver is to get a veteran. But there's no reason to think that, they get a Mecca Buka with the 20th pick, and who's to say he doesn't prove to be that reliable pass-catching wide receiver? So the Broncos, the only way they were going to get in a better spot at the quarterback position was to draft somebody. Right? I'm talking about last year, right? That was the only way. And that's a big reason why they're doing well and on a good path despite this huge dead cap number, is because they found a young quarterback. But still, even with some of that remnant remaining on the cap, they go out and they upgrade in a significant way probably their three biggest positions of need. Now, all three of these guys, Hufanga and Greenlaw and Evan Ingram, you know why they were available, you know what risk is associated with them. And that's part of the reason why the Broncos were shopping in that aisle, right? Is because they couldn't afford to pay as much as a New England or a Washington for some of these players. But the Broncos' ability to just operate and do well in free agency, despite this dead cap hit, just don't let anyone ever tell you that you can't make it work or I can't make it work. Yeah, your options are limited, but you can make it work. The Broncos took on the biggest dead cap hit in the history of football. And they were better than they were a year ago. And they were able to go out and meaningfully address their three biggest positions in need in free agency. Don't let any organization tell you they can't do it. You can. But you have to prioritize the right things. Like you have to get a young quarterback. You can't go out and chase Russell Wilson by signing, I don't know, Sam Darnold to the deal he got in Seattle, or signing Aaron Rodgers or something. Like, you can't chase that because now you're tying up even more of your cap. So there's a specific path that you have to take. And the first step down that path was you had to get a rookie quarterback. But now they've been able to add around Bo Nix, even with this hanging over them. It further shows there is no reason to just continue to double down on a mistake. I think that should be the moral to the story. Yeah, did George Paton mess up? He messed up big time. Messed up big time. In trading Russell Wilson. There is nothing that will ever change that fact. He messed up. The Broncos collectively gave it 2 years. Not even. It was a season and a half. And Sean Payton's like, we got to be done with this guy. It took him a year and a half to mentally, because he can't do anything actually until the season's over, as much as they tried to do some things, I suppose, in the middle of the season. But They had their minds made up that they weren't going to double down on their mistake anymore in October of this past football season. And I think therein lies how it's possible. Is you just don't double down. If you could cut bait and go a different direction, right? Because, again, bringing in another relatively high-priced quarterback just because, Russell Wilson's not the guy, but maybe Aaron Rodgers is. That would have been a different way of doubling down on the same mistake. The mistake the Broncos made was not listening to the fact that the Seattle Seahawks were all too eager to trade away Russell Wilson, a supposedly franchise quarterback. So if the Broncos were to bring in Russell Wilson, everything that happens, and Sean Payton is like, he's not my guy. I want Aaron Rodgers. Or he's not my guy. I want Kirk Cousins. That would be the better example because the timeline fits out a little bit more. Let's go get Kirk Cousins. They'd be in just as bad of a spot, if not a worse spot, if they had done that. But because they cut bait and they went in a different direction, the right direction, which was we got to get a young quarterback. And because in free agency, they have been very deliberate. They have been very specific on what they want. Yes, they've brought in players that are a little bit of an injury risk. But they have the chance to have significantly upgraded 3 positions on their football team. Don't double down on your mistake. Pittsburgh. I'm talking to you, Pittsburgh. Although I did see a mock draft today that has the Steelers getting Shador at 21. Wow. If the Steelers landed, if Shador fell to 21, I will eat my hat. There's no way Shador Sanders lasts to pick 21. There's no way. All of this slander that's been going on about him gets him to like 10th at worst. Come on, what are we doing here? So him being at 21 is, but it's just the hilarity of mock drafts, right? You're going through who would be a good fit on what, and then you look at the Raiders made a move to get a quarterback and some of the other things, and you're like, oh, I still have Shador Sanders left on my board. He'd be a great fit in Pittsburgh. If Pittsburgh in any way, shape, or form end up with Shador, whether it's at 21 or trading up, man, they have gotten the gift of all gifts. Because they might be signing Aaron Rodgers. They might be doubling down on their mistake. And then the NFL draft gods will go, here's the right answer. Because clearly you can't figure it out yourself, Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan. Clearly you can't figure it out. So we'll just have to spell it out for you by dropping Shador Sanders into your lap at 21. This is how you build the next great Steeler team. No way he lasts to 21. I'm sorry. No way. 719-24-7, 1313. That is the number. I almost forgot. I'd like to give away Switchbacks tickets. If you want 2 tickets to tomorrow's opener against Detroit, be the 13th texter to text Switchbacks into your name to 719-24-7, 1313. Back after this. Hello there. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on a Friday. Ryan Kaufman back with you off the road. Well, I am heading back out on the road, but it will be on days where I don't have this show because of our coverage of the NCAA tournament. So you don't care about that. If my show's not supposed to be on, then I can go wherever. But back in studio, and then coming up on Wednesday, I will be at Trainwreck, just a couple blocks south of Widener Field. There will be 2 games of the first 4 going on that evening. Got to look at what else the schedule provides, but a lot going on, obviously, at this time of year in the world of sports. So I'll be out there talking a lot of NCAA tournament, but we'll get into some other topics as well. Come by, say hi, check out Trainwreck. They're constantly upgrading, improving, changing up the menu. A lot of cool stuff. Last time we were out there was the NFL draft. Yes. So it's been a while. Need to get back out there, and happy to be back out there on Wednesday. Hopefully you'll join me 3 to 5 at Trainwreck, 812 South Sierra Madre, by the way, if you want to punch it into the old GPS. 719-24-7. 1313 is the number. Congratulations to Brian, who won a pair of tickets to see the Switchbacks take on Detroit City FC tomorrow at Widener Field. It is the home opener, which means much celebration with the first home game since the Switchbacks won a title. I have one more pair of tickets that I will give away before this show is over. So take your bribe. And for now, here are the 3 stories that are driving the show. All right, story number 1. Cooper Kupp, you are not a Bronco. Cooper Kupp signing with the Seattle Seahawks. This on the heels of a report by Diana Rossini of The Athletic that the Broncos really weren't interested in Cooper Kupp to begin with, which is interesting to me because Cooper Kupp, along with Evan Ingram, were players that I immediately identified as players the Broncos should be interested in. And I guess either I'm batting 500 or perhaps it's some posturing going on from the Broncos organization. Oh, we weren't interested in him to begin with. Now, this came out before Cooper Kupp signed with Seattle, but this was at the same time that it was reported that Cooper Kupp wanted about $14 or $15 million. So I don't know. We may never know. It would make more sense to me if it was Broncos were looking at Cooper Kupp and then they got Evan Ingram. And now they're not as interested in it. That I would buy 100%. They were never looking at Cooper Kupp, never interested. I don't know that I can fully buy into that, but Diane Rossini has, since Sean Payton arrived in Denver, been a pretty good source of what Sean Payton and the Broncos are thinking. So we'll leave that there. But the practicality of also bringing in a Cooper Kupp, having signed Evan Ingram, I understand why maybe the Broncos weren't willing to dabble one way or another. And maybe they were so dead set on Evan Ingram, they're like, we're going to get this guy no matter what, and we will have no need for a veteran wide receiver. Because all of a sudden, after it felt like Bo Nix didn't have any weapons, it's like now he has almost plenty. It's funny how adding that player in Evan Ingram at that position in that role kind of ties everything together, and you go, okay, this is pretty good, right? You got Cortland Sutton, you got Marvin Mims, now you have Evan Ingram, and then you got a bunch of young wide receivers that you can kind of have a survival of the fittest and see who emerges. And you can throw another one into the mix if you draft one coming up next month, which I highly recommend that the Broncos do. But Sean Payton's talked about this throughout the season. Right? When everyone's like, why isn't Troy Franklin out there? Why isn't, Devon Vele getting more time? What about Marvin Mims? Well, his thing was always, there's only so many footballs to go around. And the Broncos are still, at their heart, a team that wants to run the football. Another position that they can absolutely address in a meaningful way in the draft. So I understand that at whatever point the Broncos were not in on Cooper Kupp, certainly now with Evan Ingram, you go, okay, you don't really need that too. It'd be nice. But now you can invest in the draft. My thought is I think the Broncos are done adding in free agency in a significant way. Do they get a depth guy? Do they get a very cheap running back that you may have heard of? Possibly. But I think, and this is a credit to them, because I think that they had Hufanga, Greenlaw, and Ingram at the top of their list, maybe even the top 3 on their list, and they got them all. But I don't see the big need for the Denver Broncos to continue with free agency. Get ready for the draft. Make sure that you hit at 20. And make sure you follow it up, because here's the thing. Broncos could hit at 20, but if they choose the wrong position, now all of a sudden there's a run on running backs, and then they don't get one of these guys. Seems to be so many of them, and then all of a sudden they go all off the board. But could you see a draft of, let's say, maybe you go defense in round 1. What's the kid out of A&M that I could see replacing Zach Allen? Like, you go there with 1, you come back with Elijah Arroyo, the tight end from Miami, and maybe have him as kind of the heir apparent to Evan Ingram. And then you go Devin Neal. Is Neal going to last that long? Maybe you go Egbuka, and then you go a defensive player, and then you go Neal, or maybe you go Egbuka and Neal, or Egbuka and Hampton. That it does seem like there are a lot of opportunities for the Denver Broncos to check the rest of the boxes early on in the April draft, given the strengths of this draft. And that's what you do, right? You go out in free agency and you get the guys at the positions that you don't think you're going to be able to get in the draft. And then when you get to and then you hope that the positions you still have that you need, there's a lot of depth there. Wide receiver, always a lot of depth in the draft. Tight end, this one is deeper. Make no mistake about it. Tyler Warren is the big prize. So if you get Arroyo, you're not getting, it's not like, well, we got Elijah Arroyo instead of Tyler Warren. No big deal. No, Tyler Warren's that much better. But there are multiple tight ends. There are a lot of running backs. And it seems like the Broncos have played this well to where they address their biggest needs in free agency, and now they have a chance to exploit some of the depth that's in this draft. Didn't need to get a veteran wide receiver, I don't think, after they got Evan Ingram. Would have been supportive of Cooper Kupp in a Broncos uniform, but I could see why they weren't. If they got Evan Ingram, why do that? Story number 2. There is an Avs game tonight, but let's be real. We're kind of all waiting for Sunday, when Mikko Rantanen and Dallas Stars visit Ball Arena. And Mikko Rantanen doubled down on his assertion that has been backed up by some national personalities that he wanted to stay in Colorado. And it was willing to take probably less than open market value to stay there. Perhaps one last salvo to try and get Avalanche fans to not boo him on Sunday. Although, again, his claims have been backed up that it was more the Colorado Avalanche that were holding at a number, and Mikko Rantanen wasn't able to get to it. But that's all done and dusted. That's in the past. Should Mikko Rantanen get booed? Because if you asked me a week ago, I'm like, I think he's going to get abused. He's going to get like Tyler because he's the current Bertuzzi, Todd Bertuzzi treatment, like just merciless booing every time he touches the puck. That's what I would have thought a week or 2 ago. Now, I still think there are going to be fans that will boo him. I do. But I think there are some that have seen everything that's played out, have read the reporting and heard the reporting that has gone on, and was saying, you know what? The Avs didn't want him, because that's what I'm saying. The Avs didn't want him. It is abundantly clear to me, not because they don't think Mikko Rantanen's a good player, but they clearly had a plan in place where they said we could get a player of somewhat negligible difference, be able to build the depth, and that is a better path forward than to keep Mikko Rantanen. And we can argue, and we'll argue forevermore, whether that will ultimately be the right call here. But it's not on Mikko Rantanen. He went out once the Avs said, thanks but no thanks. He went out and made the best decision for his career. You expect him to go and sign for some mediocre franchise, go sign with the Seattle Kraken, although do Avs fans hate the Kraken still, or is that kind of done? Like, you expect him to just, I got to stay away. Wait, they'll hate me if I go to Dallas. They'll hate me if I go to Emmett. No. He made the best decision. The Avs said, we don't want you anymore. Mikko Rantanen then did what was best for his career. And I don't think that deserves him getting booed. Does it add some fire to this rivalry? I think it does. And maybe there will be some extra loud boos Maybe that's what form it will take. But I think it's certainly added another dimension to Stars and Avs Sunday and beyond that I find to be fascinating. But I just don't think Mikko Rantanen meets the criteria for getting booed. Boo Matt Duchene on Sunday. I think he's more worthy of your boo still, however many years later, than Mikko Rantanen is. But I fully expect him to get booed. Because how dare he sign with the Stars? Even though it was the Avs who didn't want him. So that's coming up on Sunday. Avs and Flames. Scott Wedgwood in net. Eric Johnson in for Sam Malinsky. The moves that Jared Bednar announced earlier today, if that moves you in any kind of direction as far as your viewing or betting or whatever it might be. Then there's story number 3. And story number 3 is the remarkable run of the Colorado State Rams in the month of March. Last night, the Rams advanced to the Mountain West semifinals. Neat Clifford, Colorado Springs' own, shouts to Vanguard. 25 points, 14 rebounds to lead everybody in both of those categories to help the Colorado State Rams win their 8th game in a row. And these are the type of stories before we actually get to next week and the madness. These are the stories that you love because there is no room for error with this Rams team. And they've had no room for error for weeks. Anything short of winning this Mountain West tournament probably doesn't get them in. Maybe with enough hype behind them, and I'm hearing some national people talk about this Rams team and Neat Clifford specifically. Maybe winning tonight, losing tomorrow, but in a great game or something like that, maybe gets them in because then they would have won, 9 of 10? And in a pretty good basketball league in the Mount West, they end up finishing runner-up. But I think the mentality from the Rams is very simple. They have it in their mind they got to win this tournament. And they've been playing like it for weeks. And Neat Clifford has been playing like it for weeks. And to hear him being talked about on a national level like he is, it's really fun to hear. Really fun to hear because this guy has gone from local boy makes good by going up to CU. Then he kind of bets on himself, gets out of the situation he was in Boulder, goes to Fort Collins, emerges a little bit more, but he wants to play in the NBA. NBA kind of tells him, no, you're not ready. So he goes back. And he has by far his best season. He's up to scoring average by 7 points a game. Added a couple rebounds a game. Still playing great defense. And is putting a Rams team that I don't think is as necessarily as talented as Rams teams of recent years kind of on his back. And they've won 8 in a row and are 2 wins away from getting their ticket punched to the NCAA tournament. Pretty cool March story. And then they'll become a cool March story if they get in. And a very trendy upset pick around these parts. I guarantee you that. But got to get through tonight. And that's Utah State, the last team that beat CSU. But the Rams already kind of got some revenge on the Aggies because they beat them by like 30 at Moby the next time they play. But the last team that can say, hey, we beat this Rams team, it was Utah State. And those two teams meet up in the Mount West semifinal at 10 o'clock. Oh, boy. I mean, I thought these games when I was out in Vegas were late. Now I'm back just one time zone over. I'm like 10 o'clock for a tip off. Oy, oy, oy. I'll watch though. 719-247-1313. Keep that number handy. You can either text in or call in your thoughts on this Friday, but also keep it handy because I'll give away some Switchbacks tickets next. Tomorrow, Colorado Springs Switchbacks FC opens up the home portion of their schedule, hosting Detroit City FC. It will be a championship celebration. If you want to be there, got a pair of tickets for you. If you are the 13th texter to text Switchbacks and your name to 719-247-1313. I do want to talk about that matchup coming up, but did want to bring this to your attention. Luka is not playing tonight. No LeBron, no Luka. Not quite the same feel for this game. And it goes to what I was talking about to open the show. It's rare that you have a stretch of games that can all be deemed significant like the Nuggets have had. 2 against OKC, 1 against Minnesota, 1 against the Lakers. Now this game is kind of meh. I mean, I'll see if JJ Redick plays Nikola Jokic defensively the same way, but there's no LeBron, there's no Luka. For most of it, there's no Ryan. That's what I'm saying. Like, perception is reality. It is, these games are what we base our opinions on, because we're not going to watch a game against the San Antonio Spurs and make grand proclamations about who the Denver Nuggets are. That'd be silly. Everyone gets so upset that Kendrick Perkins says all the stupid stuff that he says, and Stephen A. Smith says all the stuff that he says. And it's like, well, every time the Nuggets show up on national television and on ESPN, they stink. If your job is to cover the entirety of the NBA and have opinions on every team, what games are you going to watch? The ones that are on your airwaves, the ones that you are going to speak about. Why do you think Kendrick Perkins, I'm not talking about the Jokic MVP debate, but I'm talking about Kendrick Perkins, I think much more measured and accurate criticism of the Denver Nuggets. Because he was on TV the other night when the Denver Nuggets got smoked again by Minnesota. I don't blame these talking heads at a national level for doubting the Denver Nuggets. Every time they show up in these big time games on national television, what did I say the record was? 3-11? And that's with the win they got against OKC the other night. 3-11 against the top 4 teams in the NBA. Throw the Lakers into the mix because that's a high-profile game. And the Wolves, because that's a high-profile game. These high-profile games, many of them on national television, Nuggets are getting blown out. And we wonder why national talking heads are sleeping, quote unquote, on the Denver Nuggets. You would too if those were the only games you watched. Is that their problem? No, it's the Nuggets. They should show up for games like that. They should be hungry for games like that, like clearly Minnesota was the other night. And it's fleeting because now, not a high-profile game. Nobody cares now. No LeBron, no Luka. Don't care. I mean, you and I care. But you wonder how the national narrative gets crafted. It's games like Wednesday night where it's Nuggets, Wolves, big time revenge. Can the Nuggets find a way to finally break through against the Minnesota Timberwolves? And it's Anthony Edwards and it's Nikola Jokic and it's Jamal Murray and da-da-da-da-da. And then fast forward to the end of the game, Wolves win by 20. At some point, we can't always call out the national media. We can call out the national media for continuing to diminish Nikola Jokic as an MVP candidate because he keeps showing up on those stages, but everyone else doesn't. So why do you think they're looking to say that Golden State's the biggest threat to Oklahoma City, or the Lakers are the biggest threat to Oklahoma City, or Kendrick Perkins after the game the other night saying the Wolves now have to be taken seriously? At some point, you can't blame them. The games that are on their airwaves are kind of the ones they pay attention to the most, and the Nuggets keep laying eggs every time they show up. And now for you and I, this isn't. I mean, it would be a bad loss if the Denver Nuggets, after getting their butts kicked by Minnesota, getting physically manhandled by Minnesota again, would not bounce back at home against the Lakers. So it would be characterized as a bad loss, but not a good win. You got to make the most of your opportunities. And that's about the overall narrative. But also, how about the consequence of these games in terms of, you think that the Nuggets are just playing possum, going 3-11 against these teams? You don't think it speaks to that maybe they might have some problems with these teams? So that is more significant than how the national narrative gets, crafted. And if you're somebody that wants to defend the Nuggets on social media, your job is much more difficult when they go and fall flat on their face on national television. I mean, they're two different things, and one's more important than the other. But it's just, any way you slice it, a game like Wednesday night, it's bad. And tonight now, because no Luka, no LeBron, doesn't matter. That game that you had a couple weeks ago was your shot. Everybody was talking about the Lakers and how special they could be with Luka and LeBron, and you had them in prime time, and you got blown out. And now your chance to play them again, and neither LeBron nor Luka are playing. So this win will mean nothing. This is the entertainment business. There are showcase games where these athletes should perform at their highest levels. Well, Wednesday night, and now tonight's not one of those. No Luka, no LeBron. Maybe it makes your night a little bit easier because you're like, yeah, well, then I'm all in on the Avs and Flames. Which, with already LeBron being out, I think I was leaning more towards this being hockey for. I mean, I'll watch both games, but what one am I going to pay more attention to is probably already going to be Avs Flames. Just because of the newness of this Avalanche team, I want to keep seeing it. I want to follow a little bit closer. But now, no Luka, no LeBron. Forget it. Forget it. This from the 719 on the topic of Mikko Rantanen. Will he get booed on Sunday? I say he shouldn't. He should get a hero's welcome. And then you should hope that the Avalanche beat the Stars by 10. But you don't need Mikko Rantanen to feel that way about a game against the Stars. From the 719, if Mikko does get booed, it will reaffirm what I've always known about Avs fans: zero class and zero knowledge of the game. Think Gretz got booed in Edmonton. Yikes. Zero class, zero knowledge of the game. I think you're being too harsh there. And I'll stick up for the group here. I would certainly say that the classiness of the Avalanche fans has not been in question to me. But I do think I smooth the edges off of what you said, but I do think that it shows kind of a lack of knowledge of the situation. What are you booing him for? Because he had the audacity to sign with a division rival after you kicked him to the curb? He didn't publicly demand a trade. And it was him that put in the final, like, hey, $12 million. I'll sign on the dotted line right now, below market value. Mikko Rantanen could get more money on the open market than $12 million a year. I promise you he can. He did give the Avs a discount. Avs wanted more of a discount. Again, that's the Avs prerogative, but that also means that Mikko Rantanen didn't want to leave Colorado. Matt Duchene wanted to leave Colorado. There's a difference. So I do think if you are booing Mikko Rantanen on Sunday, then you're not up on the latest development. So harsh, but there's a little, I got to drill down into it. There's some truth to what you're saying, but soften it a little bit. 719-247-1313. Take one last break and come back and wrap up the show after this. Think you have the luck o' the Irish? Enter to win our pot full of cash. So this will be a St. Patty's Day you'll never forget, with $5,000 in our Luck of the Irish giveaway, sponsored locally by Triple Crown Casinos. Head to extrasports1300.com now to enter this national contest for your chance to win. I saw here that the Bengals are getting closer to long-term deals for both T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Because the only thing, here's the reality with the Bengals, and this happens with a lot of organizations. They're bad organizations, and then all of a sudden they get a quarterback. And suddenly it's like, oh, they're a smart organization. Well, are they? Do we know that? Seemingly the Bengals will do everything in their power to make Joe Burrow happy, which is, I think, a good thing. But at what cost? So they're really going to go through with giving an extension to both T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, and they're really going to go through letting the NFL leader in sacks go. Are they serious about this Trey Hendrickson thing? Not to mention they already lost Sam Hubbard. The Cincinnati Bengals last year got an MVP caliber performance from Joe Burrow. And it still wasn't enough to make the postseason because their defense was so bad. And now you're willingly going to get rid of the one player that was good on your defense? Or one of the only players that was good on your defense? This makes no sense to me. How could you want to give T. Higgins, I get Jamar Chase, but how could you want to also pay T. Higgins a lucrative deal at the expense of losing Trey Hendrickson? It just goes to show you, like, some organizations, they fool you into thinking that somehow they're smart now because they got a quarterback. You're not smart. You just got a quarterback. But apparently they're going to sign Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and they'll try and find a team to trade for Trey Hendrickson. And the lone hope of the Cincinnati Bengals to make the playoffs next year is to win every game 56-54. Which, because Joe Burrow's that damn good, they're going to win a few games 56-54. They just did it this year. But was it good enough to make the postseason? Yeah, Bengals are still the Bengals. Don't worry. Still the Bengals. So tomorrow, home opener for the Switchbacks. A lot of fun stuff going on, and that's what tomorrow is mostly going to be about, obviously, is celebrating the championship, and it will be interesting to see how the Switchbacks come out, because all of that can take a lot out of you, right? Their preparation is thrown off. It's going to be kind of a different lead up to the match. There's going to be a lot of emotion. See how the Switchbacks, I think the first quarter of an hour is going to be really interesting tomorrow night to see how much the ceremonies affected the Switchbacks. Because, my goodness, they could not have started their first match of the season much better. They got penalty kick and a goal within the first 2 minutes of the game. They came out and jumped on El Paso. Problem last Saturday, couldn't maintain, couldn't hold the lead. So many changes in the middle of the field, and Roland pointed this out perfectly on the broadcast, as he always does. The part of the field that has had the most change for this Switchbacks team is the middle of the field. And there were large spaces for El Paso to exploit in the middle of the field. And that's ultimately what cost the Switchbacks 3 points. And they had to settle for a point. Still, in the grand scheme of things, given the fact that this team started out for the, what was it, a month and a half? You take a road point, right? But you watch the game and it wasn't Switchbacks. If they were on their game, they get all 3 points in a game that they score a goal in the second minute. But there's a lot of new. Take a little bit of time. So I think that'll be the big thing that Roland and I will be watching tomorrow night, is if the Switchbacks make adjustments in the middle of the field. That doesn't have to be personnel. It could be personnel. But Detroit is a much better team than El Paso. So it's not going to be an easy match by any stretch of the imagination. And all that stuff still applies about the target being on the Switchbacks back and all that kind of stuff. So tomorrow will be interesting, fun. And then when we get to the business of this season's Colorado Springs Switchbacks team, we'll see how it goes. But that will be tomorrow night, 4:00. Just saw something from the Switchbacks that says very limited tickets are still available. Very limited. So switchbacksfc.com if you want to be in the building tomorrow night. If you don't happen to make it out, Roland and I will have the call for you, our pregame coverage starting at 3:30. Now, coming up tonight on Extra Sports 1300, it will be Avs and Flames. And then what do we have Sunday? Oh, Avs and Stars. Biggest game of the weekend. And then it will be Selection Sunday. And then guess what? One of the best times of the year. March, brackets, all that good stuff. I'll remind you again on Monday and on Tuesday, but just to make sure I remind you one more time, I will be broadcasting the show live at Trainwreck, 812 South Sierra Madre in downtown Colorado Springs on Wednesday afternoon from 3 to 5. We'll come out, we'll do some bracketology, see what else is going on in the world of sports, talk about that as well. So that'll be Wednesday. For now, enjoy your weekend wherever it may take you. Talk to you tomorrow for Switchback Soccer, and then again on Monday for this show here on Extra Sports 1300.